Section was called Selling Heaven, and the second is called...
Second is called Focal, Irish out of English.
Okay, can you tell me a bit more about the first word of the title, which I won't mention here? You can do it.
Focal is phonetic spelling of the Irish for word, which would be focal. So it was a kind of just play on being Irish, but you're brought up speaking English, though your grammatical structure underlying it is still coming from the old Gaelic. So really we kind of speak a sort of a mongrel version of English and Irish, and that's what I kind of write in. And the Auf was because I spent time in Germany, in Berlin and stuff like that when I was younger, which was very kind of formative. So there's a touch of Germanic that snuck into me somewhere along the line.
So you're a multi-linguist, as perhaps many or all the Irish.
I wouldn't say multilingualist because that would give the wrong impression that I actually speak several languages, whereas I can talk shite in several times.
Okay, well, apart from poet MC, you've also done a workshop tonight, and some of us were here and some of us were on stage, and you whispered to the people and told them what they should do. Why did you whisper?
What I was saying, and generally I was saying it to most people, but just in a different way. Everybody hears things in their own way. When you're reading your words, they are your words, and you need to read them as yourself, because when you're sitting down and you're writing, there's a huge amount of yourself that goes into the writing of the words, and people can forget that part when they come to read. They rely on the language, and to me language is just an inert, meaningless thing until it's actually been spoken by a person. And when it's been spoken by a person, the logos of that language is the life of the person who's speaking the language. So when you come up to read your poetry or sing your song, the more of yourself that you can put into your voice that goes into the words, then a certain magic happens in that people then start to hear you beyond what the words are. And then they become much more interested in listening to it, and then you can feel the kind of atmosphere changing in the room, which is what I would think.
I think it worked because I could hear the words much more clearly the second time people pronounced them. But I can think of a very good reason why this is difficult, and that is that people feel a bit inhibited. Yes. I think that's a big thing because you're standing in front of an audience and suddenly you're in the spotlight. Is that something you've ever had a problem with, and if so, how did you overcome it? Did you overcome it?
I think anybody who writes poetry is inhibited to start off, and the rule remains so. I think poetry is an attempt to access parts of ourselves that we find difficult to access and bring meaning to. So the whole act of poetry is an inhibition. I think an English psychoanalyst once said, Winnicott, he said, an artist is stuck between revealing and concealing. And it's that kind of tension of, I want to tell you something, but at the same time, I'm scared of telling something. And also I'm scared of, will I become in the telling different to who I think I am? So there's that kind of tension that goes on, which you should never really lose. If it gets too easy, then it's just like you're just doing, you know, jingles, go off and write ads for somebody.
Okay, thank you. I'll be back a little bit later because of the specialty of this night, and please go ahead and read us your poems.
There you get my book. Thank you, Moze.
Yep.
I'm actually going to read just two poems, one from Selling Heaven, the other one from Focal. See if this mic can stay where it was. It's a short poem, which is kind of West Cork poem. When I was a kid, I used to come down here a lot and we had great experiences. Mackerel, West Cork. Pull them in, me, my brother and uncle, God rest his soul. Pull them in, unhook them, drop them in the bottom of our ribless punt that could be crushed like an egg by a freak wave, he'd say several times. And I'd look to the shore, a half mile away, with rocks like shards of pain, and a woolen jumper on me, and I'd look at the sea of fear pushing us up and down, frothing a little, while the striped mackerel died humping the belly of the boat. And he would gun the two-stroke sputtering motor and take us out further, beyond words and things we knew. And later that night, in a kitchen full of noise and light, we ate the salted terror of the day, with smiles and stories falling from our mouths like we were gutting ourselves. This is the second one. This is a bit of what I was kind of talking about earlier. It's one of those poems where you're kind of reaching for a meaning that you're not quite sure if you actually get it, but this is what ends up down the page. This is a more Dublin poem. Hunting Dublin, not haunting. Flavour of the month was cobblestones and vomit. Ripe Dublin stank. I remember being on the piss for days on end. Induced wakefulness with various powders and pills and the smell of yourself. Ripe Dublin cut open like a belly full of maggots. Hear ye, the town crier might have said, ye deaf cunts, cobbling together story from here and tether, moving narration from happening to stance, quickening the dead to look like Lazarus. She bubbles her cauldron to flake stories out into the ether. Sacks of spuds on the quayside waiting for a return. Ah, sure it's a blight, no. 'Tis a blight on the peoplescape. Still look at them now, happy meals bursting over their arse belts, little ladies stamped with tribal tats. Watery eyes listening on the slow, erotically discharged demise of how the cranes flew away one day. Spare some change, mister. Motorings under bricked archways. Slow fat meisters set our table now. Ah, sure, let us in for a minute. I'm only looking for a city. She used to be here, trailing along the Liffey with misters and missuses, fucking each other to death. Now the community is revealed as a stale bread. Whither the sunken cock in the dark pool? Whither the sheeling a gig vagina from which we'll all fly out of like bats again into some future? The sands lie empty on Sandymount. Whistle for the sea, for she's gone too. I walk on muttering slobbery words, staying in this national velvet I was born in. Screaming, what the fucking hell are the seagulls up to? I see a child climbing out of the sand, all is well, the sea will come back. Woman will moan like a cello, it's time for a 99, while the sun is up, always up, walk on, stop, walk on, we'll make it up again, I swear. Soon, now, the flat sands lie bare, ready for these our new scriptures.
Yeah.